You felt certain about a hire who didn't work out and passed on someone who turned out great elsewhere. It's not that your gut is bad, it's that gut alone can't catch everything an interview needs to catch. I'm Magdalena Madrigal, hiring specialist at Legal Staff Now. We worked with over 500 law firms, made the Inc. 5000 list, and Bloomberg Laws covered our work. And I've helped many law firms over the years find the best candidates for them. And this is one of our principles we follow close in our hiring process. So let's get right into it. Researchers have actually studied this, how well different interview styles predict who turns out to be a good hire. Turns out it's not fixed. How well an interview predicts performance depends heavily on how you run it. A free flowing conversation feels natural. You follow your curiosity and you get a read on the person. The problem? The read gets shaped by things that have nothing to do with the job. Who talks like you, who's charming under pressure. So here's a question worth sitting with. What if the thing that makes an interview feel good are the same things making it unreliable? According to Talent Board's 2024 research, about two-thirds of employers use some kind of structured interview. A third are still deciding mostly on feel. In a law firm, that gap matters more. A weak intake hire, a paralegal who freezes near a deadline, shows up in your caseload. Here's a finding worth knowing. A major review of interview research looked at what interviews are actually good at measuring. Broadly, you're judging two things. Can they technically do the job, and will they behave well when things get messy? The research found interviews get noticeably better at reading that second thing, judgment under pressure, once there's more structure behind the scoring. Which makes sense. Technical skill often shows up on a resume. It's judgment that's hardest to read off of a page and easiest to get wrong on a hunch. That's exactly what law firms are usually trying to read in an interview. Not can they do the task, but can I trust them with the client, a mistake? So the lesson isn't structure fixes everything. It's narrower and more useful. Structure helps most exactly where your gut is weakest. So what does structure even mean? At its core, it's deciding some things ahead of time instead of in the moment. What you're going to ask every candidate and roughly what a strong answer sounds like versus a weak one. That's it. Not a rigid script, not about being cold in the room, just knowing what you're listening for before you walk in. The instinct is to resist that. It feels like it kills spontaneity, like you'll miss the real version of the person. But an unplanned interview isn't more honest, it's just less examined. You're still reacting to something, you just haven't decided what. One idea that's worth exploring is asking about real scenarios instead of your hypotheticals or personality questions. The logic is simple. How someone handled a real situation before is a better clue than how they describe their biggest strength. Though even that has a trap. A generic tell me about a challenge mostly tells you who's rehearsed an answer. The more useful version is specific to the actual friction points in the role, the moments where people tend to struggle. So it's really worth asking yourself, where do people in this specific role usually struggle? That's where your best questions are hiding. The review behind a lot of this thinking looked at 37 studies and thousands of hires and found interviews predict performance meaningfully, especially with structured scoring. This isn't grading candidates like an exam, it's deciding even loosely what separates a strong answer from a shaky one before you sit down. Without some consistency, you're not really comparing candidates. You're comparing your own mood and energy across 5 different conversations. None of this has to feel clinical. You're still having a real conversation, just with a clear sense of what you're listening for. A useful exercise, if you want to try it, is picking one role you hire for often. And think about the moment that separates your best hires from the worst ones. Not the resume line, the actual moment. A call that went sideways, a deadline that moved. That's usually more revealing than anything on paper. Ask a few candidates about that same kind of moment and notice how differently people answer. That gap is the most honest signal you'll get. It won't be perfectly clean, but some candidates will surprise you in either direction. No interview method is perfect. This just shifts the odds, which is really the whole goal. Not certainty, just better odds than a coin flip and a good feeling. So again, your gut is not the enemy here. It's just a better tool when it's working from the same information every time. That's really the whole shift, from reacting in the room to deciding in advance what you're looking for. None of this requires reinventing your process. It's less about a new system and more about being intentional with the one that you already have. Your instincts were never the problem. Pair them with a little structure, and you start seeing things your gut alone would have missed. If you want to think through what this could look like for your firm, let's talk. Book a call and we'll walk through it together.